I look forward to hearing about the various budget requests, but we should acknowledge that we are not gathered here at this hearing at a normal time, because what we are learning about what's happening at the FBI is anything but normal. Director Patel, as you ask for more taxpayer resources, we cannot look away from the credible, extremely troubling reports about your misconduct at the FBI. All four of you hold positions of great public trust. The American people trust that each of you will responsibly exercise your powers to protect them. You're expected to be on call night and day, able to make quick decisions to guard our nation's security. You must always be prepared to answer that call, whether it comes at 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. That is your duty. Director Patel, I don't care one bit about your private life, and I don't give a damn about what you do on your own time and your own dime, unless and until it interferes with your public responsibilities. Being the director of the FBI is an awesome responsibility. And when your private actions make it impossible for you to perform your public duties, we have a big problem. You cannot perform those public duties if you're incapacitated. And Director Patel, these reports about your conduct, including reports of your being so drunk and hungover that your staff had to force entry into your home, are extremely alarming. If true, they demonstrate a gross dereliction of your duty and a betrayal of public trust. I cannot imagine ever having to worry about former FBI Directors Wray or Mueller spending multiple weekends drinking heavily at the Poodle Room in Las Vegas. Now, I understand that you've denied these reports, and you will have a chance today here to challenge them. But the problem with your leadership does not end there. We're also witnessing a litany of other abuses. Political firings of trusted career agents whose only fault was following the facts and the law. That includes the firing of agents and staff from a special counterintelligence unit that monitored threats from Iran. Weaponizing the FBI to seek political revenge on former FBI Director James Comey and others. Using FBI investigative resources to go after journalists who write stories that you don't like. And just this morning, we learned more details about your firing of Brian Driscoll, a decorated FBI special agent with nearly 2 decades of experience. He claims in an interview that you made clear that his failure at the FBI was tied to, that his future at the FBI was tied to his political allegiance to Donald Trump. So you're asking for more resources at a time that you're misspending valuable resources on political revenge instead of focusing on defending our national security. I'm pleased, as the chairman said, that all of your agencies noticed our bipartisan opposition to the deep cuts from last year and have presented more robust plans this year. There are still major gaps to be addressed. One notable example among the DOJ programs is the elimination of the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Forces. As I understand it, DEA was oddly sidelined in this process. I'm also concerned about diverting resources away from core missions of each of your agencies to fuel President Trump's mass deportation agenda. Trump told us he was going after the, quote, worst of the worst who posed a danger to our communities. That would be fine. But if you look at the Department of Homeland Security's own data, overwhelmingly the people being targeted and locked up pose no risk to public safety. So when you divert resources away from fighting serious violent crime to locking people up who mostly don't pose a risk to public safety, you're making us less, not more safe. Let me close by thanking the thousands of law enforcement personnel, both local, state, and federal, who work tirelessly each day to keep us all safe. And I look forward to the hearing and discussion today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Ranking Member. I look forward to working with you as we work our way through these budget requests and our appropriations process. I now recognize our witnesses for their testimony, and I recognize the Director of the FBI, Kash Patel.
Good afternoon, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me to represent the FBI's fiscal year 2027. It's an honor to represent the 36,000 men and women of the FBI that serve around the country and around the world, especially during Police Week.
Director, would you pull the mic closer, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
This week, especially for Police Week, we pause to commemorate the incredible dedication and bravery of our law enforcement communities across the country who stand on the front lines and shield our citizens from dangers and threaten our everyday way of life. Every day, the FBI safeguards our nation's safety and security with our law enforcement partners. To achieve our no-fail mission, we fully support the President's budget proposal for the FBI for $12.53 billion to get us right-sized. Before getting into specifics, I'd like to highlight that the importance of the FBI mission is never more important than at this critical time, especially during the recent violent attacks during the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which all too many of us were there. I was proud that the FBI, within moments, immediately jumped into action, launched a bi-coastal investigation, launched fixed-wing and rotary assets and men and women in evidence response teams, bond technicians, and interviews. And within 24 hours, we had that evidence from California to Boston, back in Washington, D.C., and the individual was charged. That is truly exemplary work by the interagency and our state and local partners and the men and women of the FBI. Thanks to the brilliant personnel at the FBI, this year has been truly historic in the reduction of crime. It has been a record-breaking year. We have seen in 2025 alone a historic 20-point decline in the nation's murder rate. We also saw 44,000 violent offenders arrested by this FBI last year alone. To put that in perspective, that's twice as many violent offenders arrested in all of 2024. The FBI seized more than 2,200 kilograms of fentanyl last year. That's a 31% increase from 2024. That's enough to kill 180 million Americans across this country. The FBI arrested 8 of our top 10 most wanted fugitives in just 14 months. To put that in perspective, that's double the number of the entirety of the prior administration. We've made over 3,000 arrests and seized over 1,000 firearms at the border, including 90 high-value targets from Mexico brought here for prosecution. And through our leadership in the Homeland Security Task Force and the interagency, a 6-week effort led by the HSTFs contributed to 400 operations, 32 federal agents working it, and 91 metric tons of drugs were seized. We've also seen unprecedented progress in protecting our most vulnerable, our children. In 2025, we located more than 6,300 missing kids. That's a 30% increase from 2024. And we arrested more than 2,000 child predators and human traffickers in 2025. That's a 17% increase from 2024. We also wiped out 4 million pedophile accounts off the dark web entirely. And we also focused in on the 764 network, those who especially target our youth and are vulnerable online. And we saw a 500% increase in the arrest of the NVE community. In terms of national security, we've been equally aggressive on that front as well, on the counterterrorism side, on the domestic and homegrown violent extremist side. And there's no overstating that our work, the men and women at the FBI, proudly stopped 4 terrorist attacks in the month of December last year alone in California, Pennsylvania, Texas, and New York. We also stood up the NSPM Joint Mission Center, integrating intelligence and operational expertise across our agencies to disrupt political violence and domestic terrorism. We finally empowered our capabilities at the FBI with an AI advancement that the FBI workforce has not seen. This FBI is up using AI 230% across our enterprise. The Bureau is fully engaged in defending against cyber attacks from nation-state adversaries, criminals, and everything in between. Last year, our Internet Crime Complaint Center fielded more than 1 million complaints that totaled nearly $21 billion in losses based on cyber theft. We've also seen an increase in complex financial crime arrests, included 400 indictments, and seized over $1.6 billion in funds related to those crimes, a 65% increase. Maybe most impactful in terms of scams, the FBI has led the overseas operations in Cambodia, Thailand, and Burma, crippling the scam center compound stood up by the CCP, including the arrest of an individual responsible for $14 billion in scams alone. And we're scuttling these compounds one by one. Just last week in Dubai, thanks to the cooperation of the FBI and the Dubai National Police and MPS, we arrested 300 individuals, freed 2,000 people who forced into traffic labor, and shut down a $4 billion scam center that was operating to fleece Americans and seniors of their hard-earned dollars. The FBI's unique authorities on these front lines show that we're defending the homeland. Just last month, we extradited Zhu Zhuwei, one of the top 2 cyber hackers from Italy. They say we couldn't get him. They thought the CCP was going to get him, but now he's here in prison. Our work collectively on the counterintelligence mission speaks for itself. 43% more counterintelligence arrests in 2025 than all of 2024 from China, DPRK, Russia, and elsewhere. And as you noted, Mr. Chairman, we are busy getting ready for protecting Americans from every event of the Olympics, the World Cup, the F1, the Super Bowl, as we drive into 2028. But this summer, all eyes are focused on the World Cup, and the FBI and DHS stand ready, learning from our valuable experiences and focusing on a 14-month lift to ensure everybody is taken care of when they visit our country for this World Cup event. Lastly, we have secured record-breaking achievements to include task force officers from around the country, including deputizing our own officers, reducing the task force officer pipeline from 14 months to 60 days, allowing men and women in law enforcement to work together at speeds that have never been delivered before. With your continued support, this FBI stands ready to continue this great work, and I stand ready to answer any and all questions from you. And categorically, Mr. Vice Chairman, when you say there's credible reporting, just because you say it's credible doesn't make it so. This FBI is doing a historic level of crime reduction across the country. I'm proud to lead it. And if you want to cite media reporting to discredit the men and women of the FBI, go right ahead. The target's right here. The mission has never been more successful.
Administrator Terrence Cole, Drug Enforcement Agency.
Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. It's an honor to be here during National Police Week when we recognize the men and women of law enforcement who have given their lives in the line of duty. I appreciate your continued support of the Drug Enforcement Administration and nearly 9,000 professionals who carry out the mission across the United States and around the world. As a law enforcement veteran of more than 30 years, I come before you with a straightforward message. The threat we face today is unlike anything we've seen before. The DEA's mission has never been more urgent. Fentanyl continues to kill Americans at alarming rates. It's not just another drug threat, it's a weapon of mass destruction. Measured in American lives lost every day, it's produced and distributed by transnational criminal organizations that have industrialized death for profit. The Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation cartels, now designated foreign terrorist organizations, are driving this crisis. They operate as a global enterprise. They use sophisticated supply chains, financial networks, and technology to move poison into our communities. They are well-funded, highly adaptive, and relentless. We have to be just as relentless in our response, and DEA is leading the fight. We're taking the fight directly to these organizations with aggressive, intelligence-driven enforcement. Our focus is clear: target leadership, break their command and control, disrupt supply chains, hold accountable those who profit from the addiction and death, including the global networks that supply precursor chemicals to make fentanyl production possible, and we are delivering results. In one recent coordinated surge, DEA and our partners made more than 600 arrests. We seized hundreds of kilograms of fentanyl, multi-ton quantities of cocaine and meth, hundreds of firearms, and more than $11 million in U.S. currency. Across our fentanyl operations, we've made thousands of arrests tied to trafficking networks, seized millions of fentanyl pills, removed hundreds of kilograms of fentanyl powder from circulation. Those numbers translate directly into lives saved. We're also seeing an impact at our community level. In one city alone, targeted operations with our partners led to the reduction in violent crime of more than 1/3, and a significant amount of drugs and firearms taken off the streets. Drug trafficking drives violence. When we dismantle these networks, we're not just removing drugs, we're making communities safer. We're also focused on the financial side of this fight. We're going after the money, including the use of cryptocurrency and other tools that these organizations rely on to move and hide profits. Our reach is both global and local. DEA operates in 82 offices across 62 countries and maintains a presence of 26 field divisions with more than 200 offices here at home. This allows us to attack the problem from source to the street. We do this work with discipline and accountability. DEA's workforce is a driven agency. We have nearly 9,000 employees on board against an authorized level of nearly 9,700 employees. That includes just over 4,000 special agents on board compared to nearly 4,800 authorized. We prioritize putting people where they have the greatest impact, on the front lines. We're also careful stewards of the taxpayers' resources. More than 80% of our budget supports mandatory costs like salaries. Only a small portion is available for operational work. That means every operational dollar has to count, and it does. We prioritize keeping agents in the field, focus our resources on action that dismantles organizations and removes drugs from our community. We measure success by impact, networks disrupted, communities protected, lives saved. The President's budget reflects confidence in that approach. It supports DEA's mission, our results, and our stewardship of resources entrusted to us. At the same time, the threat continues to evolve. These organizations move fast. They exploit global supply chains, digital platforms, and financial systems. To keep the pace, DEA has to strengthen its capacity in intelligence, data, and technology. This means giving our agents and analysts the tools to connect information, identify networks, and act quickly. It means improving how we share intelligence with federal, state, local, tribal, and international partners. And it means making sure our workforce has what it needs to do the job. This is about enabling investigators to get out from behind the desk and onto the streets, where they have the greatest impact. Our mission is simple: protect Americans and save American lives. We do this by enforcing the law, dismantling organizations driving this crisis, and working with our partners across the country and around the world. The men and women of DEA understand what is at stake. They see it every day. They carry out this mission with professionalism and purpose. With your continued support, we will stay on the offensive. We will keep pressure on the cartels. We will continue to disrupt networks driving the fentanyl crisis. And we will continue to protect Americans with the resources you entrust to us. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Administrator. Now, Director Seralta of the United States Marshals Service. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, subcommittee members. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the United States Marshals Service fiscal year 2027 President's budget request. The United States Marshals Service occupies a uniquely central position in the federal justice system. While protecting the judiciary, we're also the enforcement arm of the federal courts, involved in virtually every federal law enforcement initiative. Further, we are the federal government's primary agency for fugitive investigations and have the broadest arrest authority among federal law enforcement agencies. The U.S. Marshals Service has been at the apex of federal judicial protection, investigation, and enforcement with vast mission responsibilities such as witness protection and prisoner management as well. The United States Marshals Service is unique from all other agencies and has no control over the workload for our primary mission: protecting, defending, and enforcing the American justice system. For example, we cannot control the number of threats to our protectees and the subsequent required protection details. Prisoners that enter our custody cannot be controlled. How many federal witnesses we protect, or how many judicial proceedings are held each year. We're excited to work with you in advancing the United States Marshals Service forward in fiscal year 2027. This will require increases in personal equipment for critical safety needs. Our total budget request for nearly $5.2 billion includes, God bless you, $2.2 billion for salaries and expenses, $15 million for construction, and $3 billion for federal prisoner detention. Our workforce is one of the smallest in the federal law enforcement, at about 3,800 deputy U.S. Marshals. However, in fiscal year 2025, we arrested over 73,000 fugitives, conducted over 308,000 prisoner movements, housed over 55,000 prisoners, managed 37,000 assets worth $10.4 billion, provided security details for 18 protectees, in addition to securing the residences of the U.S. Supreme Court justices. Our continued success depends on our ability to provide the appropriate funding and personnel to support our missions. The fiscal year 2027 President's budget request maintains and advances funding for core activities. The U.S. Marshals Service requests program increases of $478 million for salaries and expenses appropriation to support the addition of 918 positions, of which 645 positions are for much-needed Deputy United States Marshals. The budget request increases funding for judicial security and protective operations, establishes a protective equipment program, provides permanent resources for safe task forces, expands immigration enforcement, right-sizes fugitive task forces, and institutes a cyclical replacement of vehicles. One highlight of the U.S. Marshals Service budget request is one that is always at the forefront of my heart and this committee's concern, and that's the safety and security of our law enforcement officers. This morning, at the Marshals Service headquarters, we honored our fallen as part of our National Police Week ceremonies, recognizing officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty. We read the names of more than 300 of them. It is imperative that we provide the best equipment and training to aid in protecting our deputies while accomplishing our operational missions safely and successfully. I would like to discuss a matter of utmost importance: courthouse security and our construction appropriation. Unfortunately, the backlog of renovation projects to fix critical facility and security deficiency currently exceeds $484 million. Additional funding is necessary to maintain the infrastructure for the safety of the judicial officials, courtroom participants, the public, and our personnel. Lastly, the Marshals Service is required to house all detainees remanded to the custody of the Attorney General and must ensure sufficient resources are available for their housing and care. We have had some funding challenges in the last few years and appreciate the President's budget request of $3 billion. In closing, our continued success depends on our ability to provide the appropriate funding and personnel to support these vital functions. And so on behalf of the brave men and women of the United States Marshals Service, I thank you.
Thank you. And now, Robert Sakata, the Director of the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and I appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the President's fiscal year 2027 budget request for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I am truly honored to be here. ATF is the only federal law enforcement agency whose primary mission is combating violent crime. We arrest violent criminals, disrupt firearms trafficking networks that arm gangs and cartels, investigate bombings and arsons, and deliver world-class forensic and intelligence services to state and local partners, all while protecting the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. We are a small federal agency with roughly 4,600 employees, but we are mighty. Our actions speak for themselves. Since January 20th, 2025, ATF has arrested over 8,700 criminals and seized nearly 44,000 firearms. Approximately 5,100 were interdicted before they were trafficked into Mexico. Just over 2.7 million rounds of ammunition and more than 28,300 illegal explosives were also interdicted and seized as evidence. ATF also investigated more than 3,500 arson and explosives incidents and deployed the National Response Team to 22 callouts, including the Palisades wildfire in California. We completed more than 11,000 FFL inspections and processed nearly 856,000 firearm trace requests for our state and local partners. We've also been very busy making operational improvements to our e-forms processing times. Between January 1, 2026 and April 14, 2026, ATF received more than 1 million e-form applications and finalized nearly 924,000 of those applications. Today, we are on track to hit a new record. By the end of May, we will have processed as many e-form 1 and 4 applications in 2026 as we did in the entirety of 2023. We have done all of this while cutting E-Form's one processing times from 47 days to 42 days, and cutting E-Form 4 processing times from 230 days in 2023 to just 12 days today. The funds Congress has appropriated to date have allowed ATF to make a tangible difference in communities throughout the country every single day. ATF provides critical services to state and local law enforcement at no cost, including firearms tracing, ballistic intelligence, and forensic laboratory examinations involving firearms, arson, and explosives. These capabilities are central to identifying shooters, disrupting trafficking networks, and solving violent crime. ATF is grateful for this funding and has achieved a tremendous result, but without adequate investments by Congress, these results are not further sustainable. That is what makes the President's FY27 budget request for ATF so important. It totals $1.652 billion for salaries and expenses with 4,749 full-time equivalents. It is what ATF requires to sustain our mission. Notably, the administration's budget includes two program enhancements, $7.8 million for NIBIN and $25.8 million for combating gun violence. The NIBIN enhancement will enable ATF to replace aging ballistics imaging equipment and expand correlation services to additional sites. This would ensure timely investigative lead generation, allowing law enforcement to identify and apprehend violent offenders more effectively. The combating gun violence enhancement will enable ATF to add 86 positions, including 60 special agents, to support the expansion of firearms trafficking task forces along the southwest border and increase ATF's ability to identify, disrupt, and dismantle cross-border smuggling operations. If enacted, the administration's budget will enable ATF to sustain core capabilities, modernize critical infrastructure, and continue providing and expanding access to services for law enforcement partners, allowing us to continue focusing on our unique mission of combating violent crime. The Senate has been a staunch supporter of ATF's mission. I'm deeply grateful for that. I look forward to continuing to work together. I thank you all again. I look forward to your questions.
Director Sakata, thank you very much. We'll now begin with a round of questions, and I'll begin with you, Administrator Cole. I just returned from a visit to China, where in conversations with Chinese leaders, we again push the issue of precursor chemicals and their import to Mexico and ultimately the drugs to the United States. I've also been to Mexico and met with the leadership there to encourage them to discourage China from continuing to import those precursors. What's the DEA, what are you doing as the administrator to engage those foreign partners in China as well as other places, India, for example, to break down this supply chain?
Senator, thank you. And DEA is laser focused on targeting and disrupting the supply chain out of China as well as in India. We've held two bilaterals this year with Chinese officials, one at DEA headquarters and the other one at our Rocky Mountain Field Division. We continue to work on the ground in Beijing, China, with NCB, the National Control Board in China, as well as MPS, the Ministry of Public Safety. We continue to stay engaged. We continue to target the Chinese organizations that are sending this precursor chemicals into Mexico for the manufacturing of fentanyl to come across our border. We will continue to stay on our front foot. We will continue to target. We will continue to work with U.S. Ambassador David Perdue on the ground in China, who's been a tremendous advocate on the ground, not only for all federal law enforcement, but for protecting American citizens in our country from this danger of the precursor chemicals that continue to flow into Mexico and into Colombia.
Administrator, how do you evaluate the interest, the willingness of the Chinese officials and other foreign countries, their leadership in actually assisting in keeping the precursors out?
And at the ground level, we're working extremely well. I think there are still barriers that are in place. I know the President's visit this week will be fruitful as we continue to stay on the offense when it comes to protecting Americans to this precursor chemicals that continue to flow into Mexico and China. The Mexican authorities have stepped up their game with bilateral cooperation. I think everybody at this table has seen an increase in the cooperation with Mexico. but we need more. We can only determine the effect when we start to see the decrease in Americans that are dying at the hands of this poison that is coming out of Mexico, but is being fueled by China and India.
Thank you for your efforts, and I look forward to results. Director Serralta, you are the second U.S. Marshal I ever met in a visit to Florida when you were in the District of Florida, and I appreciate the hospitality you extended to me, 3 years ago or so, as I tried to learn about the Marshal Service in this capacity I hold on this committee. You mentioned infrastructure at courthouses. I've taken an interest over the years in the Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee working to provide additional resources for judiciary security. And that has included security operations, courthouse security, protective details, and threat response capabilities. We've also worked to provide legislation so that information can be removed from websites regarding members of the judiciary and their families. You mentioned another aspect of this in your testimony, and that's about infrastructure. I leaned back to my staff to ask if this subcommittee has jurisdiction over infrastructure at courthouses, which I didn't necessarily think we did, but we do because it comes out of your budget. So I wanted to give you the chance to highlight, for me at least, what's the current circumstances that our judges and court officials face in regard to threats, and if you want to re-highlight for us the things that we might do to be helpful to make their persons more secure.
Thank you, Senator Moran. It was a pleasure to have you in Florida. I hope to do that again sometime.
You did that never knowing that you were going to be the director of the U.S. Marshals Service.
I did not know that.
Assume.
Correct. So our judicial security protective operations is due to with the president's budget to have an increase of $34.6 million. And that's going to strengthen and expand the protective operations mission by adding more dedicated teams and allow the USMS to surge resources when threats necessitate enhanced judicial security. But you bring about the question about the construction backlog, which I mentioned in my opening. The construction backlog is $484 million, and that includes $30 million of it for prisoner elevators. So anytime we have to take a prisoner through a different elevator or up the steps, we risk the prisoner injuring himself or someone being injured by having the prisoner walking in unsecure locations. So it is a serious concern. It is something that I believe goes to the judicial security as a whole. The Marshal Service mitigates and we triage what areas we work with first with the input of the judiciary.
You would take just one more minute before I turn to Senator Van Hollen. What threats, what's the significance of the threats members of the judiciary and their court officers face today? Is it changing?
So for the last several years, there's been an increase in threats. Any threat that is a viable threat to a judge, to us, is serious business. It's something that we will investigate and arrest individuals and seek prosecution on. So there has been an increase in threats. It's been over the past several years, and it's fueled primarily by social media, where folks can be brave on the internet, yet when we go meet up with them, they're not so brave.
Thank you. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you. Director Sakata, you hold a position of public trust. Do you agree that you should lead by example and be held to at least the same standard of conduct as you expect of ATF agents?
Yes, sir.
And would you agree that if one of your agents was unable to perform his or her duties because of excessive drinking, you would need to take corrective action or disciplinary measures?
Yes, sir.
Director Serralta, same question for you with respect to the U.S. Marshal Service. Do you agree with the responses from Director Sakata?
Ranking Member Van Hollen, that would be correct. I would do that after a thorough investigation by our internal affairs.
Administrator Cole, same question to you with respect to the DEA.
Yes, sir, I would echo what Rob and Gaddy have said. After a thorough review by our OPR, Office of Professional Responsibility, yes, sir.
Director Patel, do you agree with these three gentlemen as the
Yes,
head
sir.
of the FBI? So you agree, Director Patel, that if one of your agents was unable to perform his or her duties because of excessive drinking, you would need to take corrective or disciplinary action. You agree with that statement?
We would implement the inspection review process, just like these other agencies have their own internal investigations, and complete that review.
As I said in my opening remarks, I really don't care about your personal life so long as you are able to perform your public and official responsibilities, which are awesome responsibilities. Multiple reports, including reporting by The Atlantic, have alleged episodes of excessive drinking, unexplained absences, and behavior that concern current and former FBI and DOJ officials. You have publicly denied those allegations and filed a defamation lawsuit. So today, as you testify before Congress, is it your testimony that those allegations are categorically false?
Unequivocally, categorically false.
So there have been no occasions during your tenure when FBI personnel were unable to promptly reach you?
Absolutely not. You can ask my entire workforce. They hear from me at every single hour of the day, as do these great gentlemen here, as do the men and women of the interagency and state and local law enforcement and the White House.
And so there have been no occasions when your security detail had difficulty waking or locating you, is that right?
Nope, it's a total farce. I don't even know where you get this stuff, but it doesn't make it credible because you say so.
I'm not saying it, Director Patel. It's been written and documented.
You are literally saying it.
No, I'm saying that these are reports, Director Patel.
No,
And
unlike
I
your
will
baseless
say,
reports, the
Director
only person
Patel-
that was slinging margaritas in El Salvador on the taxpayer dollar with a convicted gangbanging rapist was you.
You know, the
only
fact-
person that
the-
ran up a
Director
$7,000 bar tab in Washington, D.C. at
This
the lobby
suggests
bar
to me-
was you. So
this
the only individual
suggests
in
to
this
me that
room
the
that has
allegations
been
are
drinking on
true.
taxpayer dime during
Are
the day
you polygraphing?
is you.
Director Patel, come on. These are serious allegations that were made against you. They're
The
in a
allegations
lawsuit
are
that
false.
you filed.
You drinking margaritas with a gangbanger
actually,
is true and on
it
video.
just goes to show you don't-
running a $7,000 bar tab at the lobby bar
Director Patel,
has been filed by your own
this
office.
goes to show-
drink during the day. That's you.
Mr.
This is
Chairman-
the ultimate example of hypocrisy.
Chairman-
I will not be tarnished by baseless allegations
let
and
me ask the
fraudulent
question.
statements from the media.
The fact that you mentioned that indicates you don't know what you are talking about. Now, here, Director
The only thing I
Patel-
know is you're the one drinking margaritas with felons.
Actually, that's a false statement, and I'm asking you about your statements.
I've answered that.
And I'm asking you about a particular report. And
It's
it
not
is
a
your
report.
testimony. So let me ask you this. Are you willing to take the test, it's called the audit test, that members of our active duty military and others take to determine whether they have a drinking problem?
I'll take any test you're willing to take.
I will take it, Director Patel. I'll take it. You ready to take it?
Let's go.
Yes or no?
Let's go. Side
I'll
by
take it.
side.
I'll take it. All right. I think that the fact that you're so, have you ordered polygraph tests of members of your team to determine how that story came about?
The FBI conducts polygraph tests all the time.
No. Have you ordered polygraph tests for members of your team to determine who was the source of the stories that I'm asking you about?
I don't order any polygraph tests. There's an internal inspection review process for any and all leaks, especially of baseless information at the FBI, that's been in place for the last 30 years. Those processes are followed by career intelligence and agents on the ground.
So I'll take that as a yes, since you said that these were unauthorized disclosures. I have another round of questioning regarding your firing people who were important to gathering intelligence with respect to Iran, but I'll wait for my second round. Thank you,
thing.
Chairman.
Senator Collins, we're pleased to have the chairwoman of the full committee with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, the proliferation of illegal marijuana grow houses connected to transnational criminal organizations originating in China is an ongoing problem in the state of Maine. A DHS memo in 2023 estimated that Maine had as many as 270 Chinese-backed illegal marijuana operations, producing up to an estimated $4.3 billion in illicit revenues. Since then, thousands of pounds of illegal marijuana have been seized, primarily because of the tireless work of our Maine sheriffs and local law enforcement in Maine. One other side effect of these illegal grow operations is they usually destroy the houses in which they're located, which exacerbates the housing shortage in my state. Last year, you testified that the FBI would be sending more resources to the field, specifically to Maine, to combat these dangerous operations. I speak with Maine sheriffs frequently about this problem, and they have reported some improvement in federal interest and participation. For example, federal support has been critical to track money laundering, which is often linked to these operations, and in providing interpreter services to question individuals who are arrested, who often appear to have been trafficked and forced to work and live at these sites under hazardous conditions and don't speak English. Bring me up to date on how the FBI is working to address these dangerous grow houses that are operating not just in Maine, although we're a particular target, but Oklahoma, California, and other states as well. It's essential that we have support from FBI, from DEA, from Treasury. This has to be an all-of-government effort to close these operations down.
Senator, I couldn't agree with you more. And what we did since you and I we've spoken in between you last year in this hearing, but the HSTFs that we stood up, the Homeland Security Task Forces that we stood up in 59 locations across the country, co-led by DHS and FBI, have specifically targeted the marijuana grow house operations, especially tied to the Chinese. There's two problems there. The Chinese nationals that are doing most of the criminal activity related to the grow houses have either severed ties or covered their tracks very well, and has led us to be unable to determine their direct connectivity. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, back to mainland China. That's kind of their MO on how they do, whether it's grow houses or any other criminal activity. So what we're doing with the HSTFs is reverse engineering those programs, taking down the grow houses, whether they're in Maine or Oklahoma, and tracing their banking records and their financial statements to see what we can do with the sanctions program overseas and shut down the financiers of these operations.
Do we know where the money is going to? Some law enforcement officers in Maine believe it's tied to the fentanyl trade.
Yes, ma'am. I believe, as these gentlemen will tell you, the money always goes back into the drug trafficking trade, into the drug traffickers' pockets. And so we're not seeing, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, what we're not seeing yet is the money directly being shipped back over to mainland China and the CCP from these grow house operations.
I would encourage you to even increase your efforts even more, because this remains a huge problem in Maine, despite the valiant efforts of our sheriffs and local law enforcement. Administrator Cole, could you provide an update on DEA's efforts in this area?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator. And we continue to target those specific marijuana traffickers in Maine. As of recently, we had executed 44 search warrants in reference to Chinese underground marijuana houses, seized about 32,000 marijuana plants, over 500 pounds of marijuana. And as we continue to trace the Chinese underground banking system, where the funds are being fueled, as the Director Patel had said, they're often using crypto as the instantaneous transfer of wealth. And what that requires our skilled investigators to do is to pull those findings off the blockchain, but to specifically look at 1, 2, and 3 tiers removed to help identify exactly where that those illicit gains are going to. We continue to stay on the offensive. Recently, with our Bangor main office, we've identified up to 250 potential locations where this is occurring. So this is ongoing cooperation with our state, local, tribal partners and our federal partners, not only through our efforts, but the efforts of the Homeland Security Task Force that has come together. We will stay on the front foot. We will continue to target and investigate and bring them to justice. Unfortunately, they are embedded, which requires long-term, complex conspiracy work to continue to eradicate not only the poison of the narcotics, but the environmental dangers that they bring to these grow houses. So we will continue. We will keep you posted, Senator. My team is happy to follow up with your team to give you progress and update reports.
Thank you. What I have found is a lot of time constituents who live near these houses know what's going on. I mean, all of a sudden, the windows are covered. They see people going in and out at odd hours. They can smell, in some cases, the marijuana. These are not the licensed operations that are legal in Maine. These individuals are not following any of the rules, and they are operating illegally and causing tremendous harm. The fact that your latest reporting shows that there's still 250 houses, and that's probably an underestimate, it shows how incredibly serious this problem is. And again, think of the affordable housing crisis in Maine, in Oklahoma, and other states. These are houses that become uninhabitable because of the amount of black mold that is usually inside of them. So I hope you will continue the task force effort, because this really requires an all-of-government approach. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each of our witnesses for being here today. Director Cole, I'd like to begin with you. And I'm very pleased that the New England Drug Lab, which is located in Londonderry, New Hampshire, has now opened, not officially, but soon. And it's soon going to start processing samples. But I am concerned about the staff capacity for that lab. And I understand it's going to take about 50 full-time personnel once it's fully staffed. And it's the 8th regional DEA lab. So can you tell me how many positions the DEA needs to fully staff all of its labs, and whether you have requested money in the budget to do that?
Senator, thank you for your support of the DEA lab and the funding to go along with it. We are happy to report on time and within budget.
Right.
Two things you often don't hear in government, but on time and within budget. We are looking forward to being the subject matter experts in building that capacity there. Chemists, fully on board. We are ready to go. We are currently hiring the fingerprint specialists that are going to be required, but we're committed to have that lab fully staffed to service the men and women of local, state, and tribal law enforcement as they continue to identify new synthetic strands of opioids that continue to arrive in the United States from Mexico that are being fueled by China. It's important to realize that as we continue to identify these strands and push out these PSAs, we have a recent PSA, public service announcement, that went out last week regarding 3 more strands of synthetic opioids. This
yes,
lab is...
we're seeing that in New Hampshire, and we're very concerned about it. But so you're comfortable that the money that you've requested in the budget would fully staff not just our lab in New England, but all of the other 7 labs?
Yeah, so the great thing about DEA with the chemists, they are the highly fully staffed core series at DEA at almost 97%. We have a class in session right now of 17 more chemists coming on board. So I'm very confident that we are going to be staffing levels at 98, 99%
right.
within the next few months. Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you. That's very good news for us, and the New Hampshire delegation is interested in being helpful in any way we can. Director Seralto, I know that you said that at the Marshal Service, you can't really control much of the work that you have to do, that you have to handle whatever comes your way. But you can control what you request in your budget. And I noticed that your budget request increased funding of more than $152 million for immigration-related activities, but only, I think you said, $34 million to increase judicial security. And I am concerned that given the increase in criminal activity against our federal judges, that, as you point out, the threats to them are problematic. So can you talk about why the dramatic increase in immigration funding, but only, about a quarter of that to handle judicial security when that's a major aspect of the work that you all do?
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. I appreciate that question. So our immigration ask for $152 million expands the USMS's participation in the Homeland Security task forces, whose mission is to disrupt transnational criminal organizations. It also provides funding to support the USMS's increased workload in our traditional missions. So the efforts of our immigration work as a nation are going to add to the cost of the Marshal Service's processes.
I understand, but we've just passed billions of dollars for immigration activities and no additional funding in the Republican-passed reconciliation bills to address judicial security. And given, as you point out, the threats to judges across this country, don't you think it might be better to rely on the billions that are in those bills to address immigration and refocus those dollars for the Marshal Service on judicial security and courthouse security?
Well, Senator, I can tell you the Marshal Service could use the money for the security situations with our backlog in construction. That is a big number. That's $484 million.
Right, I understand that. So who made the determination that you were going to increase immigration funding by such a large amount?
Well, in staffing the HSTFs, the president has given us money to be able to staff those HSTFs. So it is so that we don't take away from judicial security. That's why that number is higher. Our judicial security protective operations has gotten a $34 million, or the budget proposed a $34 million addition.
No, I understand, but the $152 million I understood was also an addition. My time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Graham.
Thank you. Mr. Cole, what would you say to anybody who wanted to abolish the DEA?
Well, I would have them take a look at our direct workflow currently, where last year we seized close to 57 million fentanyl pills in the United States, close to $900 million in U.S. currency that came from drug traffickers. The foreign footprint that we currently have, you would have cartel members celebrating all over the world, designated terrorists celebrating all over the world that the DEA was gone.
That's a good answer. So terrorists and drug cartels would be celebrating. So I just want to say to the men and women of the DEA, thank you. I think you make our lives eminently safer. You're doing things that most of us wouldn't want to do in the shadows. So I just wanted to get on the record my view that you perform a very important function. Director Patel, when you look at the threat streams against our country, are they going up or down?
The threat streams over the last year in general have gone up over the last few years, which is why you've seen the resulting amount of violent criminal arrests. If we're arresting 44,000 people, which is twice as many as the year before, that's because there's a lot of violent criminals running around America. But the good news is that the FBI, along with these men and their agencies, are doing the work and arresting people at record levels: gangbangers, narcotics traffickers, sex traffickers, terrorists, and those that pose the greatest threat to our national security.
During the Biden years, they say 11 to 15 million illegal immigrants came into the country. Are you familiar with that reporting?
Yes, sir.
So what are we supposed to do? Just ignore it?
Well,
You don't want to ignore it, do you?
not at the FBI, no, sir.
Good. I mean, if you had 11 to 15 million people coming in illegally, you'd want to push back. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. We have pushed back. Actually, we've reduced violent crime in every one of our 50 states by an average of 10 points.
Yeah, so you got to plus up the resources to deal with what happened, what I would consider a virtual invasion of our country by illegal immigrants. And to all of you on the front lines, thank you. I mean, the idea that we wouldn't want to do that astounds me. I mean, we got to get, control over our country again. Director Patel, when it comes to systems, do you think the country would be well served to have a law like I'm proposing called Logan's Law that would require states to report to the Attorney General of the United States the results of all cases involving violent crime where you could get 6 months or more, to include the charge and the plea bargain so we'd know better about soft on crime prosecutors and judges?
That bill is critical to providing the information that we at the FBI house at our Criminal Justice Information Center, CJIS property in West Virginia. We are only as good as the data we're given. We don't go out and proactively and legally obtain that data from our partner enforcement agencies across the country.
So you would support Logan's Law requiring
Absolutely.
that to be done?
We need it.
Yeah, I think so too. And the man who in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who shot at a bunch of drivers, he had a long criminal record. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
As a matter of fact, while he was on probation, he shot at police officers and not much happened to you. You're familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree we need to break the cycle of catch and release and looking the other way when it comes to violent crime in this country?
I think catch and release is the #1 cause of recidivist violent crime in the history of the United States of America.
Okay. When it comes to the FBI, how's morale?
I'm sorry?
How's your morale at the FBI?
Morale has never been better. When I go across the country and I talk to the line agents and the intelligence analysts and professional staff, I travel around the country, I talk to our state and local partners, they tell me one thing resoundingly: we're finally going to do the work that we were asked to do with the resources that we needed to get the job done. And that's what this administration is focused on, and that's why you're seeing the results that we talked about.
Mr. Cole, do you think we're seeing dividends from your focus on illegal drugs and cartels and all the above?
Absolutely, Senator, and we will stay on the offensive, whether it's taking Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela or capturing the next Chapo or helping coordinate the next Mencho operation. We will continue to target those foreign terrorists that are killing Americans.
Do you agree that the Maduro operation not only was flawless, it sent a new message that a new sheriff's in town and created deterrence we haven't had before?
I think it sent one great message to everybody in the Western Hemisphere and to dictators and foreign terrorists around the world that they will be held accountable for sending this poison to the U.S.
Thank you all very much.
Senator Coons.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, Senator Murkowski, and I appreciate each of our witnesses for being here today. During National Police Week, I just wanted to express my particular appreciation for the men and women of each of your agencies. When I was county executive, I was responsible for the second largest law enforcement agency in our state, and our partnerships with Marshals, ATF, DEA, FBI, and many other elements of federal law enforcement were really critical to our investigations and working to advance security in my home community. In just the last few months, the Newcastle County Police have worked with the FBI to arrest a suspect who had both plans and weapons to carry out a mass shooting at the University of Delaware. Worked with DEA to investigate methamphetamine distributors. Worked with the Marshals Service to arrest a suspect with a warrant out for attempted murder. These are just a few brief examples. I have other topics to get to, but if each of you could just briefly tell me, what are your plans for strengthening your partnerships with local law enforcement, and what more do you need from Congress to execute on those plans? Director Patel.
Thank you, Senator. One thing we always need more of is data from state and local. Anything we can do from a legislative perspective at the federal state level to get us that data so we can ingest the data and get it back out to our partners, that's critical. What we're doing to expand specifically at the FBI. For the first time ever, we stood up our LEPIC, our Law Enforcement Partner Engagement Council. So I didn't want to just hear from police officers from around the country by email and phone call. I embedded 10 officers and sheriffs and tribal officers permanently at the FBI because they're the best connected. And so for us, that's the best way forward, along with getting out into the field and making sure our field partners see and feel us and touch us and tell us what their problems are.
Thank you, Director.
Senator, more connectivity to our state, local, and tribal partners is the utmost importance at DEA. Due with the significant change in the landscape with synthetic opioids, with more methamphetamine pills coming in, more cocaine coming in, it's important that those state and local counterparts, the men and women that are on the front lines every single day, have the same intelligence and the same information that the DEA does. Part of this is coming from our capacity to build foreign partnerships. The amount of foreign partnerships and people we have downrange in Mexico and Colombia, that intel is critical to the beat officer that's working in rural areas. So we have to continue to be better partners, continue to be more engaged, and respond when they call for help to address violent criminal activity.
Director Seralto, I'm going to interrupt myself. I appreciate the work that you and the Marshals Service do to keep federal judges safe, but there's thousands of state and local judges who don't have the same intelligence network, the same resources. I'm proud to co-sponsor a bill with Senator John Cornyn that would create a new state judicial threat intelligence and resource center. It would provide security assessments for local courts and help local law enforcement make assessments about how to keep judges' homes safe and how to keep court personnel safe. It's passed the Senate unanimously. Do you have any opinion about whether or not the House should take it up and whether or not partnering with state and local court systems would help advance judicial security in this country?
Senator, thank you. Thank you for your work on that. My opinion would be is that any judge that we can keep safe, whether it be in state or the federal bench, we should keep safe. To that end, I'll tell you, judges make decisions that are life-changing, sometimes to themselves. So 50% of the time, someone is upset with the judge's decision, right? Whether they win or lose. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. The justices, judges, the judiciary are the pillars of our country.
I look forward to working with you on protecting and promoting judicial security. Director Patel, reauthorization of Section 702 is something I've previously grappled with, but we've not heard at all from officials from the FBI or the other intelligence agencies testifying about the proposed 18-month clean extension. Were you invited by Chairman Grassley to testify before our committee about Section 702?
What I recall, Senator, is that we in the FBI team have been providing briefings pursuant to the chairman's request. So we've done at least a dozen in the Senate and at least half a dozen or more in the House, including myself and Director Ratcliffe personally.
Okay. I have not participated in or benefited from any of those briefings. And doing oversight on the reforms that were put in place and how closely they're being followed is critical to my concluding whether or not I'll vote for an extension. Director, I have to ask you one last question. You attended the Olympics in Milan. How much did your trip cost, and to what extent did that help you carry out your mission as director of the FBI?
I greatly appreciate the question, Senator. As you know, the FBI and DHS are responsible for the security of the Olympics, the World Cup, the F1, the Super Bowl, and everything else. We had 250,000 Americans travel to Milan. We're proud that we stood up our jock there and had 0 major security incidents involving American citizens. And what we did was we purposely planned that trip around the Olympics because, as I mentioned in my opening, the top cyber criminal from the CCP was housed in Italian custody. While there, we were able to work an agreement, an arrangement to have that individual expelled from Italy instead of going back to China, like has so often happened in places like Serbia. And so we accomplished that mission, and we kept it quiet, and that individual was returned to America 2 weeks ago.
I was concerned that just before we went to war with Iran, a whole group of FBI agents were terminated, about 10, who were reportedly analysts with expertise in handling Iranian counterterrorism, fluent in Farsi, long experienced. I know there's ongoing litigation, but have you replaced them? Was there a reason for their dismissal? Do we have the capabilities we need to protect the United States while there's an ongoing war in Iran? the public reporting as to the reasons for their dismissal, I found deeply troubling.
Well, as I've addressed earlier, I don't believe the public reporting is accurate. What we did do for the first time in FBI history is stand up the Iran Threats Mission Center that is housed inside the FBI with our Iran experts, including intelligence and analysts and agents, and we have seen a 47% increase in the arrest of Iranian spies.
Do you disagree that there were 10 Iran specialists dismissed right before the war began?
Yes.
Senator Hagerty.
Thank you, and I want to thank all of you here today to testify, and particularly I want to thank your staffs for what they do for our nation, and more importantly, I want to thank you from the people of Tennessee, specifically what you've done for the people of Memphis. Just very, very much appreciate your efforts. I'd like to talk with you all about how this administration is making Americans safer and how it's demonstrated its capacity through its transformative impact on crime in a great city, Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis boasts a rich cultural history, wonderful people, and community leaders that are dedicated to their city. It's a hub for major logistics and medical device manufacturing, and it's now also home to advanced technologies like XAI. But it's been troubled by serious violent crime. Director Patel, I remember in December of 2024, we had a conversation about how Memphis needed an all-hands approach to deal with this situation. And I asked you at that point, when you were contemplating coming in to run the FBI, if we could get help from the world's most sophisticated law enforcement agency to revitalize the city of Memphis. And you were overwhelmingly supportive of that, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. In fact, I was so honored to host you in the spring of 2025 in Tennessee as we let unfold the plan that would actually help rescue Memphis. And it later became the Memphis Safe Task Force, but it started out under the radar with the efforts that you put in place. And I thought I would just get you to expand for the benefit of this committee, the efforts of the task force, how it was ultimately supported and how it laid the blueprint for, again, becoming the Memphis Safe Task Force that we've seen today.
Well, you're absolutely right, Senator. It was an interagency lift by the task force that's led by these gentlemen here on this committee, working relentlessly to safeguard not just Memphis, but places like Washington. But I thank you for highlighting the FBI's work. Before the task force was stood up, the FBI launched Operation Viper and Operation Summer Heat. And what we did is launch and deploy and surge assets across the state of Tennessee, but specifically in Memphis, to cripple the localized street gangs, the firearms capabilities, and drug trades that were just everywhere. And for those that don't know, I know you know it, Memphis had the highest per capita homicide rate in the country. And now we've reduced that by, I think, 54%. Yeah. So what we did was we set the ground. We set this phase 01 operations with the FBI on the ground. And thanks to the brilliant leadership of Director Serralta and the President's task force, we completed that mission. We're doing Operation Viper in 24 separate states because we want to replicate what we did in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. To everywhere else, and so we're welcome to partner up with anyone that wants to replicate that.
I applaud that. I'd just like to say, though, I've seen the great success, and I know more to come, but to make certain that it's permanent, Director Patel, I want to make certain that you've got the resources and the flexibility that you need from this committee to make that happen. Anything that you'd like to advise us that you'd like to see to achieve that objective?
Well, thanks to you and the leadership in Tennessee, we just opened up our new office in Memphis to permanently assure the citizens of Tennessee that we're not going anywhere. And the budget request enhancements that we've put in place will allow us to hire the agents that we need to fill those billets across the country.
Yeah, that's a nice reversal from previous policy. Thank you. And thanks for all of the effort. Director Serralta, I'd like to turn to you. Certainly things didn't stop with the FBI's crime task force. That effort laid the groundwork for the president to issue an executive order establishing Memphis Safe. Director, given your direct involvement, can you walk me through the results of Memphis Safe task force from your perspective and where you see it going from here?
Thank you, Senator. Thanks to your support and that of your colleagues and local government there as well. It's been highly successful. So the president's decisive action in Memphis proves that when federal government partners with local government leaders, we can turn the tide against failed experiments in criminal justice reform and make America safe again. Since launching on August 1st, 2025, and as of April 30th, 2026, I am pleased to report that the operation has yielded 8,701 total arrests by federal officers, averaging 40 per day, including 64 for homicide, 957 for narcotics, and 791 for firearms violations. We've seized 1,426 illegal firearms in Memphis alone, an average of 6 per day. That could have fueled more shootings, assaults, or worse in that city.
I'm looking actually at one of the records. We had a daily report on this, and I would commend this to my colleagues. This is amazing work that you're doing. Thank you, Director. I hate to cut you short, but I just would like to ask you one other question. It's a glaring example to me when you have cooperation from a state, from a city, what can happen, and the results that you just went through, dramatic improvement. Rather than calling our law enforcement Gestapo like we've heard in some other parts of America, we've embraced the help, and the results have been dramatic. And I'd just like you to share with us the response that you've received from the people of Memphis.
So it's 31 agencies working together. That includes state and local and federal. And the operation has had significant positive impact on the lives of the Memphis residents. The city residents and visitors are now visiting the downtown area. Local businesses are rallying back. There's been large-scale public events have also shown improved safety outcomes. That was demonstrated in December with the St. Jude Marathon, which hosted about 22,000 runners, and not a single burglary was reported that day. And that's different and compared to other years. Perhaps the most telling is one of our Special Assistant United States attorneys recently reported that a traveling emergency room doctor expresses appreciation for what the task force has done. He said that in recent years past, he would have approximately 3 to 5 gunshot wound victims per shift. And now he sees an average of 1 gunshot victim every 3 or 4 shifts.
It's dramatic.
We've made an amazing impact, and the fiscal year 2027 President's budget request includes a vital program increase for us, $76 million for 200 positions. This is to have that staying power that you were talking about earlier with Director Patel.
Thank you, Director Siralton. I just want to say again, I want to thank all of the employees of the 31 agencies that have made Memphis safe again. It's an example that I hope my colleagues here on the committee will look to and say this is a true example of where cooperation can make a difference here in America, and you have transformed a city for us.
Senator Murray.
Thank you very much.
Manners. Thank you for joining us, Vice Chairwoman.
No worries.
And I appreciate your presence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I want to start by recognizing important work by the FBI to crack down on fraud. In one case, the FBI helped bring justice multiple former business owners who orchestrated a $205 million Medicare fraud scheme on the American people. And those business owners filed nearly 1 million false claims for services that they never provided to any patients, literally stealing from American taxpayers and preying on vulnerable people who were suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia and substance abuse. But thanks to the FBI, those crooks were held accountable. So I just wanted to ask you today if you would pass along my gratitude to those FBI agents for their tireless work bringing those criminals to justice.
I will, ma'am. The fraud work is often overlooked, and I greatly appreciate that.
And very important. But I do have to say, unfortunately, President Trump, the guy who says he's going after fraud, granted this man, Lawrence Duran, clemency last June. He was set free and let off the hook for the $87 million he owed in restitution. And Trump granted clemency to Duran's business partner last February, cutting well short her 35-year prison term. He literally undid the important justice work the FBI served and let fraudsters off the hook, and I find that deeply disturbing. With that, I want to say, I want to take a moment to reiterate the important role of DOJ law enforcement in keeping all of us safe. Those agents and deputy marshals are absolutely critical to making sure public safety and solving crime. But I worry that instead of pursuing these child abusers or terrorists or drug traffickers or other criminals, you have our agents spending time carrying out Stephen Miller's mass deportation agenda and harassing families and children. I want to ask you, Director Patel, how many FBI agents have been reassigned to work on immigration enforcement?
No one at the FBI has been reassigned to work solely on immigration, ma'am.
Well, I would differ with you because according to the Cato Institute, more than 2,000 FBI agents were reassigned to work on immigration enforcement in 2025. By the way, it's not just the FBI. More than 2,000 agents from the DEA, more than 600 from the Marshals Service, and more than 1,000 ATF agents are spending their time on immigration enforcement. That has really pulled critical, highly trained assets off of work to keep our communities safe from drugs and guns and other threats, and I find that deeply disturbing. Now, Director Patel, I want to ask you about a number of extremely troubling stories recently about your leadership and temperament and what's happened to the FBI with you at the top. And in response to all the concerns about your leadership, instead of righting the ship, you've taken to polygraphing your employees to scare them and attempt to rat out leakers. There are reports that you're using FBI resources to investigate journalists for reporting what's going on, and that is absolutely not what this committee intended when we funded the Bureau. So can you commit to this committee today that no agent hours have been pulled from other work like counterterrorism or violent crime investigations to work on matters related to negative press about you or your personal lawsuit?
Senator, I greatly appreciate the question, and I can tell you unequivocally, this FBI is targeting and investigating no journalists. This FBI is targeting no journalists. The Obama and Biden administrations targeted dozens of journalists, sent out 1,200 interviews.
I didn't ask you about the Biden administration. I asked if you can commit to this committee that no agent hours have been pulled from other work.
We have not done so.
Okay, well, there are reports that are using FBI resource to investigate journalists. You are saying to this committee today that that is not true.
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, well, let me just say, Director Patel, we need a serious budget, but we also need serious leadership. And I will say this, there's one clear priority in Trump's overall budget, and it isn't law and order, it is war. Because while Trump is proposing cuts to programs that really do keep people safe, he wants to increase war spending by $500 billion. And I don't need to tell anyone here we are not going to bomb our way to safer communities. So I intend to help rip that budget up and write bills that keep families safe. But beyond that budget, we need serious leadership at the FBI that the American people can trust. And I am deeply concerned about the reports that your leadership has not been serious. We need somebody at this agency who's focused on solving criminal cases, not passing out branded bourbon or jetting around the globe. Your job is to be reachable. And I know Senator Van Hollen asked you about this, but I gotta say, if you want to pass out liquor or pop bottles in a locker room, stick to podcasting, leave law and order to people who really do care about justice and appearances. That is really critical, and it's what I am really deeply concerned about, and so are many people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I respond? This is what real leadership looks like at the FBI. Every one of you was given it. This is what's happened under my tenure at the FBI and the Trump administration. 20-point drop in the homicide rate, 45,000 violent offenders arrested last year, twice as many as 2024, 2,450 criminal gangs disrupted, that's a 322% increase from 2024, 6,900 child victims have been located since I've been in the seat, that's a 144% increase, 2,900 child predators and human traffickers arrested, that's a 70% increase, and we've arrested 8 of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in the world in 14 months, that's twice as many in the 4 years combined. That is what the men and women of the FBI are doing, well-resourced. Everyone should take a look at this. If people want to continue the baseless, fraudulent, false personal attacks at me, that's great. Keep the target on me, as I've always said, but the mission has never been better.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond to
Senator Murray.
I appreciate the work of our FBI agents, but leadership, serious leadership, is a concern. And we are seeing the pictures of passing out branded bourbon and what happened at the Olympics, and jetting around the globe and all the rest of it. And that, I will say again, Mr. Chairman, is of deep concern to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I'd like to begin with the agency that you lead, Director Patel. Over the past decade or so, the FBI has come under intense and justified scrutiny for perceived and actual misuse of agency personnel and resources for political objectives. Director Patel, what steps have you taken to refocus the Bureau to its core missions of counterterrorism and counterintelligence on federal law enforcement and on criminal justice?
Thank you, Senator. I think the weaponization of law enforcement that you spoke of was caused by the centralization of the FBI in the National Capital Region. What I mean by that is, before I got in the seat, over 1/3 of the entire FBI workforce was located in the National Capital Region. When I got here, I put 1,000 agents into the field permanently. Every single state got more agents than they've ever had. Behind that, I sent 300 intelligence analysts into the field permanently. Behind that, I sent 500 support staff and program managers into the field permanently. And that's only CONUS. We've also expanded our overseas footprint. So decentralizing the bureaucracy of Washington, removing the red tape in the bureaucracy, putting agents in the field in Nebraska and everywhere else is how we're getting the mission done. And no one at this FBI is allowed to politicize or weaponize law enforcement. If you do, you don't get to work there anymore.
Thank you. We all know that our country faces mounting and increasingly complex threats to our homeland from foreign adversaries and domestic operatives who are acting on behalf of these malign foreign interests. These adversaries have seized on several recent global conflicts to try and undermine America's geopolitical interests by sowing fear and dissension here at home. The FBI is tasked with investigating foreign and domestic threats to the United States. Director, can you tell us, how is the Bureau coordinating with other federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, other members of the intelligence community, and the military to monitor and mitigate threats to our homeland?
What we've done specifically with the Homeland Security Task Force in 59 separate locations is bring in every single agency into one roof and centralize the collected intelligence that they all piece together with their state and local partners. That's critical to the mission set. We've also done things like stand up the C4, the Counter Coordination Fusion Cell in Southwest Arizona, specifically targeting the drug trade with embedded DOD on a DOD facility, on DOW facility. So we're leveraging all capabilities across the board. Our CIA and CT work could not be stronger. We have 2,000 terrorism cases at the FBI. Our CI work has expanded, not gone down. As I've said, we've arrested 44% more espionage actors from China, Russia, and the DPRK and Iran alone. And we're doing that because the interagency, including the intel community, is finally providing us with ways to turn information and intel into evidence that we can use in a court of law.
Thank you, Director, and please thank the members of the FBI for me as well. Administrator Cole, from the Chinese precursor chemicals to the cartel-facilitated cross-border smuggling efforts, the global supply chain undergirding that illicit drug trade is posed a serious challenge for federal law enforcement. And the DEA and other federal agencies have made outstanding progress in exposing and disrupting various aspects of this often opaque and disturbingly well-resourced network. Administrator, I was on a CODEL with the chairman of this subcommittee in China, and the precursors to fentanyl is something that we brought up to various officials in the Chinese government. Have you seen a change in the illicit drug trade in recent years, and especially with your time at the agencies? What are we seeing on the ground?
At the ground level, the teams are working extremely well, not only in China under the ambassador's leadership, but as we continue to target the Mexican cartels, Sinaloa and CGNG, that receive the precursor chemicals. We need to make sure that we keep an eye on the northern border as well. We see more precursors coming into the port of Vancouver, coming into Canada, and the Canadians, with the Mexican cartels in country, have started producing and manufacturing fentanyl in Canada. In the last 2 months, there's been significant seizures of fentanyl in Canada.
Do they cross our country to get there? How
they
do
arrive
they
at the
arrive in there?
Port of Vancouver.
Okay.
And then they transition through Canada to the different source locations for manufacturing production, and then it comes across our northern border. It's something that everybody at this table is worried about. We continue to keep the pressure on China, on India, continue to target the leadership in the cartels, but very conscious of what's going on the northern border as well.
Thank you, and thank you all for the work that you do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Sakata, you've been neglected. I can't let that go. First of all, let me thank you for your, I calculate, 20 years of service in the ATF. And prior to that, as a police officer in New York and Plainville, Florida?
In Plantation, Florida.
Plantation, close enough.
Yep.
But I want to focus on those devices which transform a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic rifle. For many years, the federal government took a position that forced reset triggers were, in fact, illegal. And yet, there was a case in which, in 2025, the DOJ reversed itself, and they essentially, by their reversal, allowed these forced reset triggers to become legal. And all you have to do is buy one, find one, go to YouTube, look at the YouTube. Takes about 2 minutes to put it in the weapon, and now you're firing at about 30 rounds in 4 seconds, which my experience, and I did professionally carry an M16, is that's an automatic weapon. What are we going to do to prevent these type of devices from getting out and raising the threat to the public?
Good afternoon, Senator. Thank you for your question. I think just to stay focused on the topic of machine gun conversion devices, they come in all shapes and forms. Some referred to as switches, as they are sometimes put into semi-automatic pistols to convert from semi-automatic to full automatic, drop-in auto sears for rifles. And ATF has been dealing with an issue related to this for many, many years. The technology has made this proliferate much easier because many of these are either 3D printed now or manufactured in China and shipped to the United States by the container load in some cases. As it relates to the force reset trigger, I'd like to answer that question. That particular type of device was litigated and settled with the Department of Justice not too long ago. I won't be able to comment too much on that specific settlement with the Department of Justice, but it relates to the force reset trigger itself. There are many other types of devices that convert firearms to shoot from semi-automatic to full auto. What we are doing with our partners, state and local partners, our federal partners, and our agents, the devices that have already been determined to be drop-in auto sears, other conversion devices, they remain the same. This settlement relates specifically to the force reset trigger made by Rare Breed. Yes. And I think there's a misconception that this applies to all types of trigger packs that are out there that increase the rate of fire that do not operate in the same way that the force reset trigger made by a Rare Breed does. So it's a very technical, nuanced matter, and our folks at ATF are asking our partners to initiate with us so we can actually examine these devices to see if they are under that settlement or if they actually fall into the other category.
The Washington Post reported that the ATF's chief counsel, Rob Leader, objected to the settlement and reportedly thought that, quote, the devices are dangerous and the classification as machine guns should stand. Did you or your predecessor object to the finding? And is Mr. Leader's objection sound? He's an expert in the law of machine guns.
Yeah, I think, sir, that this is a matter that Mr. Leiter found to be a very technically nuanced issue in the way that trigger operates. It's a little bit challenging to explain here in this room, but I think if we were able to demonstrate the way they operate as compared to a switch like a drop-in auto sear, there's a clear difference, and I think that's where we found room for the settlement
Well,
that Mr. Leader participated in.
I would suggest that you're looking at the wrong criteria, in my view, based on, again, carrying an M16. It's the rate of fire. It's not the construction of the sear or it's a trigger effect. And when you have a rate of fire of 30 rounds in 4 seconds, that's an automatic weapon. And I think that's the way you should just characterize your weapons. If you need congressional support, please call me.
If I may, sir, I think I understand where you're coming from, and the rate of fire, unfortunately, is not what the statute defines the machine gun by. So.
Well, we should change the statute. So, thank you very much.
Senator Britt.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here today. Director Patel, I'd like to start with you. I want to just highlight some of the great work that the FBI has done in Alabama. So over the last year, we have seen the Bureau oversee the arrest of 1,187 criminals. We have seen you seize 31 kilograms of cocaine and over 3 grams of fentanyl. If you look over just the last 4 months alone, you have arrested 152 criminals, 15 of which have crimes related to human trafficking or crimes against children. And that includes a 2-week operation, Operation Southern Star in Montgomery, Alabama, which was an interagency operation where I believe you had 63 arrests, 52 guns recovered, and 40 drug seizures. As a resident of Montgomery and as someone who is raising her children there, I want to say thank you. On behalf of me, on behalf of all the moms and dads that are raising their family there, and on behalf of our community, we say thank you. And I know that this is not just Alabama where you're doing this across the country. It is why the FBI has overseen the largest dip in recorded murders in history. I just want to say thank you. And I think it is also why you have asked for a significant increase when it comes to actually returning to your mission of putting criminals behind bars. I completely support that request and just want you to kind of expand what that would do. Can you talk about how that increase would help you continue the good work that you're doing in Alabama, going after criminals, violent criminals, cartels, and others? And of course, across the country as well.
Thank you, Senator. I will pass on your kind words to the workforce for sure. They're greatly appreciated. We're doing 2 things, as I discussed earlier. Decentralizing Washington, D.C. and putting human capital in the field. And in order to keep backfilling that human capital, we need more. So we need to take on the outdated onboarding pipeline program at Quantico. We've seen the BFTC, our Quantico graduation classes, increase since I've been in the spot, because it used to take over 14 months to get in, and we've shrunk that by over 4 months. We haven't lowered the standards. We just eliminated the wait time after a paperwork application was put in. But what we also need to do is work with our state and local folks in the field and provide them with the advanced training capabilities they need, specifically, for instance, the drone program capability. We launched the first ever of its kind for state and locals ever in the history of the U.S., a counter-UAS program down at the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. We've graduated 65 state cops from that program. The wait list is long. Every single agency across the country wants their police officers there because they want them there for the World Cup, they want them there for sporting events, they want them there for counter-narcotics. So the enhancements we've requested specifically relate to Redstone Arsenal, our advanced training capabilities, including our cyber center, our TDAC school, and we're the only ones in the world that have a ballistic research facility that's housed at Redstone Arsenal. That's how we train the next generation of law enforcement officials, and we need more seats, more humans in the seats that we have.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that we will continue to support that. I know the work that you're doing there is cutting edge, and it is also preparing us for what's to come. So thank you, and thank the men and women who work alongside you for making all of this happen. Director Cicada, I know that we discussed at your confirmation hearing the great work the ATF is doing to combat the flow of illicit Chinese vapes into our nation. And I also know Directors Seralta, that the Marshals Service was involved in some of the recent seizures that we saw as well. These unsafe products target kids in many instances, and I think we have got to put a stop to this. Can you discuss how you think that your budget request for these agencies is going to allow you to enhance your efforts in these space and get these off of our streets?
Good afternoon, Senator. Thank you for your question. As you mentioned, Director Seralta, myself, Director Cole, Administrator Cole, I'm sorry, and our partners at the FDA are working hand in hand to identify these wholesalers and retailers that are dealing in these illicit vapes. We are, I can speak for ATF, we are very short-staffed as far as our agents go, and our agents are primarily focused on the violent crime efforts that we're making around the country. Although we are greatly appreciative of the President's proposed budget for 2027, that budget maintains current services. It doesn't allow for expansion into other areas. So we would love to have more agents to focus on this effort in particular, but it's very challenging for us to do so with the budget that we have.
Absolutely, and I am out of time. I just want to associate myself with the chairman's comments with regards to the Marshal Services and the protection that we provide our judges, from our justices to our circuit court to our DJs. We need to make sure that you have the resources you need to keep them safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Britt, thank you. Senator Peters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our witnesses here today, thank you. Thank you to each of you for the work that you do every day, especially during National Police Week, as we all gather here. So again, thank you. Director Patel, we are now more than 2 months into a war with Iran, a leading sponsor of terrorism, and we have already seen at least 3 terrorist attacks related to that war, including one at Temple, Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan, where a Hezbollah-inspired attacker rammed a vehicle into a synagogue holding approximately 100 young children. And yet the FBI has not yet put out an intelligence bulletin about the threats to the homeland resulting from this war. Something that is, as I think you know, usually standard action in coordination with the National Counterterrorism Center and DHS, and is absolutely essential to ensuring that state, local, tribal, and territorial private sector partners are prepared for these threats that we are seeing and actual actions that we're seeing. So my question for you, Director Patel, just to confirm, has the FBI, in coordination with NCTC and DHS, issued a joint Homeland Threat Intelligence Bulletin to state, local, tribal, territorial, and private sector partners on the threats from Iran and its proxies as a result of this war?
I know we have pushed out numerous PSAs, and I believe through the ODNI we have spoken collectively on the matter, but on the synagogue attack, the FBI directly coordinated with the synagogue 3 weeks before and provided training, which the synagogue themselves stated helped prevent the loss of
No, I agree with that. Certainly, I have a question later, but that was a good thing, absolutely. But is there a coordinated bulletin going out to all the entities that I mentioned? We have not found that bulletin. We have not seen that. That has been prior practice for the FBI. I'm wondering why this is different this time. That's my question.
So what I'm saying is the FBI sent out PSAs to all our state and local partners, and I'll check with ODNI, but we should have sent out a coordinated, collected message out on that front.
Well, if you could forward that to me, because we have not seen that. So I'd appreciate that if that's the case. If you could forward that to our office, I would appreciate it.
Senator Peters, is a PSA the same thing that Senator Peters is asking about?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
We'll see. I'm, as ranking member of Homeland Security and Government Affairs, Chairman Paul and I, working in a bipartisan way, Chairman Paul, have requested a committee briefing about these threats, about the threats related to what's happening as a result of the war in Iran. About a month and a half ago, we're still waiting to get that briefing from the FBI, and we're the Committee on Homeland Security in the U.S. Senate. Can I get a commitment from you that we will get that briefing as soon as possible?
Absolutely.
Good, thank you. Director Patel, for decades, the FBI, in partnership with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, has played an absolutely critical role in helping both state and local election officials defend against threats to our election. The FBI briefed election officials on both physical as well as cyber threats. It's helped political parties and campaigns secure their communication systems. That has investigated foreign influence operations, and it's investigated threats against our election workers. And the work was bipartisan, it was technical, and it was trusted over those years. However, today when we look at what the FBI is doing, it seems to be somewhat different. In January, the FBI seized more than 650 boxes of 2020 election materials from Fulton County, Georgia. In March, the FBI subpoenaed records from a 2020 election audit in Maricopa County, Arizona, an audit that itself actually reaffirmed President Biden's win. And in April, the Justice Department demanded that Wayne County, Michigan, the largest county in my state, turn over ballots from the 2024 election. So Director Patel, my question is, why should state and local election officials trust the FBI to support them in actually keeping our elections free and fair when the FBI recently appears to be more focused on supporting baseless speculation and debunked conspiracy theories about both the 2020 and the 2024 election?
Well, two things, Senator. Thank you. As to the execution of legal search processes, we went to federal and state magistrates, and like we do in any case, and received a ruling of probable cause to advance any investigations we're working on. As to the overall security of the election, that is of primary importance with us, which is why we at the FBI and me have installed ECCs, election county coordinators, in every single 56 field office that I have. We've also stood up a national security, election security post at headquarters for the upcoming midterm elections. And so we are continuing to keep that a priority and collect information as it comes in from overseas and also around the country.
Well, that was my follow-up question there. I mean, but you know, what we've been seeing, some of these actions here are ones that are related to these debunked theories. But our officials want to know what is going to happen going forward. They're going to want to ensure that state and local elections are indeed going to be free and fair, and folks are being protected by the FBI. You mentioned a couple of initiatives. What is the main message that you want to tell right now to election officials all across the United States, that the FBI is actually going to be their partner to ensure, as we have seen in the past, free and fair elections that have occurred every single election in the United States in recent history, that it's also going to happen again this year?
That's why we've prioritized and stood up these ECCs. That's why we've prioritized and stood up these national coordination centers. And that's why we're hand in glove embedded with CISA and DHS to ensure the integrity of this upcoming election. We have prioritized that. We have flexed more resources to that, including the personnel I've shifted out to the field. So they're not just at headquarters, are working on election security and election integrity around the country.
Well, as you come before the Committee on Homeland Security, which I appreciate your commitment to have that briefing, we're going to want to do a deeper dive into that, and I would hope you'd be prepared to do it at that time, and you could commit to doing that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, directors, all of you, for your good work. I'm sure you have figured out by now that you're not going to be able to make some people in Washington, D.C. happy. I regret that. One of my colleagues talked, Director Patel, about you traveling too much. Is it important that you go out there and travel and talk to our line agents and try to maintain morale?
That's one of the most important parts of the job. And if I can, when it comes to travel, I've actually traveled 1/3 less for personal holidays than my prior two predecessors combined, and I've taken half as many days off as my prior predecessors combined.
Have you ever seen United States senators travel, including overseas?
Frequently.
You've seen that?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I want to ask you and Director Cole. I see where the Department of Justice, presumably with your cooperation and good background work, just indicted a governor in Mexico for working with cartels to poison our people, which everybody's entitled to a defense and they're innocent until proven guilty. But I saw none of that in the prior administration trying to get serious. Tell me I love the people of Mexico. They're just wonderful people. They're our neighbors. We buy a lot of their goods and they buy a lot of our goods. But help me understand why so many of the political leaders in Mexico cooperate so fully. Well, strike that. Tend to have very close ties with the drug cartels. Is it money? Is it power? Is it fear? And what do we do about it?
I'll address it generally. The case is specifically the DEA's, Senator, but generally speaking, we've been able to retrieve 98 defendants from Mexico in the last year, which is, I think, triple the year before. So they're cooperating in ways that they haven't done before in the past. But I do see your point, and I agree that largely it's fear, Senator. These cartels have so much power, and you've seen them go down there and kidnap people, behead people, burn people. And I think it's a combination of the fear and a little bit of the corruption because of the influence they have with the amount of money they make from the narco trafficking trade, which is why we're prioritizing bringing it down.
Mr. Director.
Senator, it's good to see you again. And,
Good to see you,
and I
sir.
testified during my confirmation hearing
Yes, sir.
Regarding the arrest of Garcia Luna, who was,
Yes, sir.
who was in charge of the federal police in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And after a career special agent, had the opportunity to work in Colombia, Afghanistan, and end my career in Mexico, there's no doubt that the narco traffickers and high-ranking government officials in Mexico have been in bed for years.
Mm-hmm.
But for all of a sudden, we're paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
We have a president who fully supports America first, Americans first. They are just as much responsible for the death and destruction of record amounts of Americans by cooperating, by conspiring, by helping, producing this poison to come across the border and come into our country. And Senator, I can assure you, this is just the start of about what's to come in Mexico.
Good. I think it's important, and I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but I think it's important that we keep the pressure on. And I appreciate the good work that both of your agencies have done and that the president has done. Because the current president didn't do this, but when a prior president of Mexico runs on a platform of hugs, not bullets, with respect to the cartels, that sort of speaks volumes about what they're willing to tolerate. Can I ask one question, Mr. Chairman of Director Patel? Tell me why we shouldn't require warrants under Section 702 when our intelligence people access the records of American citizens.
I think you're referring to the query process of U.S. persons under 702, Senator.
Yes, sir.
Because under Section 702 as it stands, the collection from 702 is already lawfully collected under federal statute of overseas individuals targeted by the intelligence communities. And just to clarify, 702 is run separately by the FBI, the NSA, the CIA. They have their own separate 702 programs. So for us, in order to have the ability to defend the homeland appropriately, all we are doing when we run a query is we're asking that this selector popped, and we have no other information. So it would be factually and legally impossible to obtain probable cause because we just walk into a courtroom and say, we got this selector, it's connected with so-and-so lawfully collected information overseas. We can't tell you, Judge, anything else about it. They would say you don't have probable cause. And that's why the query system exists, to go in and see if they're actually connected to any terrorist activities or narcotics trafficking activities or otherwise.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kennedy, thank you. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today, your testimony. Last week, we recognized May 5th as a day to remember those who have gone murdered, missing, Indigenous persons. Unfortunately, in Alaska, this is something that we use some pretty strong words like epidemic and crisis. The Urban Indian Health Institute reports on the numbers that are out there right now. And in Alaska, we've got 229 murdered missing Indigenous persons, 80 murdered, 149 that are on the missing list. And the statistic that is always so troubling is that when women go missing, when women come up, are determined to have been murdered, 75% of them are Alaska Native women. I mean, the statistics are just shocking and deeply, deeply troubling. Alaska is the 4th highest state when it comes to murdered missing Indigenous women in the country. Obviously, we have a large Indigenous population, but it is something where when you listen to the statements from so many Native women that they feel unsafe in their home communities. They feel unsafe in their villages, and they feel probably most unsafe in the biggest village, which is Anchorage. We're working on trying to make some headway here in this space, but we really need to understand where the gaps are. And we talk a lot about the data gaps. And so I'm raising this with you, Director Patel, and asking for your support and that of your team. You have great folks in Alaska, but I would suggest that given we have a small population, big landmass, and a problem and statistics that just don't match up to our demographics, that we need some help. We've got good cooperation between all of our federal agencies, working with our tribal partners and with the state. But I would just ask your commitment today that if you haven't already trained a focus in this area, that you will commit to helping us in Alaska.
Absolutely, Senator. That's why we launched Operation Steadfast Promise, which is the first ever of its kind year-long campaign for crimes on tribal lands across the country, to include Alaska. And I'm proud to tell you today that one of the biggest problems I was informed about over the last 14 months was communication gaps.
Yep.
And the FBI, for the first time ever, completed its pilot program on the Navajo Reservation down in Phoenix area with Starlink capabilities. And we are now going to be delivering to every SAC Starlink capabilities specifically and solely for communications on tribal lands to conduct and investigate tribal investigations.
Well, and I just might add that the communications is one thing amongst the law enforcement, but it's also communicating back to the families,
Yes.
the families that are so anxious. And this is where I think we have some real failures, if you will. And I'm stressing it with regards to Alaska, but it is Alaska Natives, but also American Indians, as you've pointed out there. So I appreciate your commitment on that level. I wanted to ask about your comment, Administrator Cole, when you were talking about the fentanyl that we're seeing coming from China into Canada and then coming back in. Vancouver is not too far away from where we're sitting over there in the Northwest. I want to just confirm that as we are focusing on intercepts at the southern border, we're not taking our eye off the ball when it comes to the northern border. And this is to you, Administrator Cole, when it comes to the drugs, but also to you, Director Patel, in terms of the terrorist threats that we may see, who may be looking to the northern border as perhaps being more porous, certainly longer in my state. So if the two of you can speak to that.
Senator, from a DEA perspective, we're keeping our eye on Canada. We're going to open 2 more offices in Canada, proposed for 27. But we will continue to do outreach. We'll continue to work with the tribal and the Native Americans when it comes to educating them, providing them the resources. But number 2, the tremendous working relationship we have with the U.S. Postal Service with intercepting packages that are leaving the states going into Alaska. For example, in April, we had a targeted enforcement where we got 10 kilos of fentanyl in multiple packages that were going into Alaska and 5 kilos of methamphetamine that were leaving domestically going into Alaska as well. So this is the importance of the holistic approach, opening more offices, but keeping our eye on this cause and effect that we see from the Mexican cartels now entering into Canada.
Thank you. Director?
Yes, Senator. What we've done specifically on the northern border front is launch and stand up the first of its kind Homeland Security Task Force in Alaska, which allows us to take a lot of the funding and resources that we have access to and put more agents and intel folks, not just from the FBI, but from the other agencies across the board. And what we've also focused on, at least at the FBI, is working with our Canadian partners on the production capabilities that the drug traffickers have moved up to the north of our border, and specifically fly it into Alaska and also into mainland America on tribal lands. And we've had some success there working with our Canadian partners because the drug traffickers got smart with the securitization of the southern border and moved it up there. So we're tackling that with our CEAS partners.
Thank you for not taking the ball off that. I have a question for Director Serralta regarding the federal detention facility in Alaska. We do not have a federal detention facility in our state, so all federal inmates either have to be housed at a state prison, or more often they're just sent out of state. And it is at considerable cost to our U.S. Marshals to transport these federal inmates. We have asked for a feasibility study to determine whether it's now time to do that. The last time that this was reviewed was over 20 years ago at Senator Stevens' request. I've got report language in a past appropriations bill about a new study, but quite honestly, the response that we received from the department has been pretty lacking in detail, and so I would ask you, Director, if you'd be willing to take a look at this and have a conversation with us about the need in the state of Alaska.
Senator, thank you for your question. The answer to your question is yes. I'm willing to look at anything that will facilitate the processing of prisoners in a safe manner. However, I have to notate that we use about 80% of our jails are state and locals. That's throughout the nation, so it's not uncommon. However, there is perhaps a Bureau of Prison prison project that may work well in Alaska, but I would have to see what.
I'd look forward to a conversation with you about it. We unfortunately don't have anything that comes cheap when it comes to taking care of our federal inmates, whether it's on the state side or shipping them out. And so it is a cost matter, but it also is a great burden on our U.S. Marshals. And I appreciate the good work that you do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Senator Van Hollen and I are going to just have a couple of wrap-up questions, and then we'll conclude the hearing, and I'll turn to Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Director Patel, I've been listening carefully to your responses to some of my colleagues, and I want to start with a question that Senator Coons asked you that relates to this article where the headline is Kash Patel's latest firings ousted agents with expertise in Iran. The article says that these individuals were fired for their role in the classified documents investigations of Donald Trump. First of all, is that true?
The article, just like all the other articles you cited, is false, and there's ongoing litigation, so I can't address it.
Okay. You did answer Senator Coons, and I understood your answer to be that the people that were fired, that none of them were part of the group that had Iran expertise. Is that your answer?
No, he asked if they were Iran experts. I said they were not.
Were the group fired? Did it include people who were Iran experts?
No.
Did it include people who were involved in counter-espionage activities with respect to Iran?
I don't have the list in front of me.
So you don't know whether or not you fired people with counter-espionage experience with respect to Iran. You don't know the answer to that question.
I terminated anyone and everyone that weaponized law enforcement.
I see. So it was related, obviously, to the classified documents case. So
that's not what I said.
Well, Director Patel, I understood you to say in response to Senator Murray that you've not redirected FBI resources toward the immigration enforcement effort.
That's not what I said.
Okay. Have you redirected resources away from your core FBI responsibilities toward the mass deportation effort?
No one at the FBI has been permanently reassigned on the immigration front, and when we pull the numbers, the FBI's overall operational field expenditures surged periodically for immigration enforcement activities, including the arrest of 2,000 people with direct ties to foreign terrorist organizations, was 2.4%.
So, okay, so the key word there, I guess, was permanently. You have not permanently reassigned. Is that what you reassigned temporarily?
Surges, yes, sir.
Okay. Have you had a chance to listen to or read about Brian Driscoll's statements about what you said to him and the reasons for his firing?
No, I have not, sir.
So let me just say this, Mr. Director. In your response to me earlier, where you had a little bit of a blow-up, you made a couple provably false statements.
So did you.
No, Mr. Director, I was reading about and asking you to respond to allegations that are made. In fact, I was giving you an opportunity to do that, and you took that opportunity. But in the process, you made these provably false statements that I know are sort of like urban legend in right-wing media about margaritas in El Salvador, which is provably false. And so coming from the mouth of an FBI director to make provably false statements in a hearing like this is extremely troubling. And it leads me to ask whether or not the other things you've been saying are false statements. And so because that's a provably false statement. You made a couple others that are provably false. And this is from the mouth of the FBI director.
The only one that made false statements is you.
My final question to you, Mr. Director, is do you know that it is a crime to lie to Congress? Do you know that? That's my last question.
I have not lied to Congress.
I didn't ask you
that.
that.
Lied to Congress is you.
Do you? I'm not testifying here, sir, and I don't lie.
Maybe the next time you run up a $7,000 bar tab, we can talk about it.
Well, see, there you go, lying again. You suggested
in the FEC report. I'll post it right now.
You suggested it was public. It wasn't public money, as you know. That was for a 50-member staff party.
So it was a $7,000 bar tab.
Mr. Patel, I'm glad. Let me just say in closing, Mr. Chairman, two things. I'm glad that you have agreed to take the test regarding, whether you have alcohol problems. I'm glad you agreed with me to do that. You still haven't answered my final question. Do you know, Mr. Director, that it is a crime to lie to Congress? Do you know that?
I do not lie to Congress.
I didn't ask you that.
And you're insinuating that I am because
I asked you whether you know.
You want to correct your time in this session where you got steamrolled by the facts so you can have a Twitter narrative so you can go raise more money and spend more money on $7,000 bar tabs.
Just let the record
I'm not
show,
going to give
Mr.
it
Chairman.
to you.
The Director of the FBI apparently does not want to answer the question about whether or not it's a crime to lie to Congress, and I find that extremely troubling.
I find it troubling that you lie to the American people every day.
You are a disgrace, Mr. Director.
Not nearly as big as you.
The fact that you can't answer that question, that concludes my questioning, Mr. Chairman, but I'm obviously very troubled.
A question for the Director of ATF. Director Sakata, I want to talk just a minute about NIBIN. I don't need to explain to you what NIBIN is, but it is a very useful tool in involving violent crimes and illegal firearms. While I strongly support the Second Amendment and the right of law-abiding citizens to own guns and carry guns, I also believe that the responsibility we have with law enforcement is to make certain you have the tools to target violent criminals who use firearms to terrorize communities. Your budget requests a program increase of $7.8 million to support NIBIN. I wanted to give you the opportunity for me to hear the reason for that increase and how that tool will be helpful to law enforcement officials in my home state of Kansas.
Good afternoon, Senator. Thank you again for your question and your support of ATF, in particular with the crime gun intelligence services that we provide to our state and local partners. NIBIN is one of the three legs to the stool of crime gun intelligence and probably one of the most important. Our correlation review specialists are housed in two facilities, one in Huntsville, Alabama, and one in Wichita. They review approximately 3,000 images per day that are received from our state and local partners. Those images are fired cartridge casings that are recovered in crime scenes from across the country. Those experts, which we call correlation review specialists, have a capacity as to how many images they can review over their 8-hour shift and be able to successfully match to a crime scene out in the field. We currently run 2 shifts, about 16 hours a day, in both of those facilities, and we service approximately 12,000 police departments around the country. We have a pending backlog of about 30 police departments that are waiting to be added to NIBIN, and many more that are seeking support in acquiring a brass tracks machine, which is the actual machine that takes the images of either the fired cartridge casing or a test-fired casing on a firearm we would recover from a crime scene. The capacity is pretty much capped right now. And we have a number of issues we're dealing with. In 2027, about 226 brass tracks machines go end of life around the country for our state and local partners. Those partners do not have a budget to replace those machines, which would mean that the critical services we provide and the way those departments are interdependent on one another to share that intelligence, because often shooters come to one city, commit a shooting with their firearm, but live in another city and use those firearms in those other cities. We actually develop quite often the leads from the adjoining city. So it's critical for us to have the money to keep on modernizing the system and to be able to take on the additional capacity that our state and local partners require ATF to be able to handle as we continue to tackle this problem of violent crime attributed to violent felons around the country.
And that's the purpose of the $7-point-something million.
A portion of it, yes, sir.
Okay. And it used to be, let me understand about this. Do you provide the necessary device for local law enforcement to make that finding that they then forward to the NIBIN Center?
So that the device is called the brass tracks machine.
The brass tracks machine?
Yes, sir.
And do you provide that to local law enforcement?
We in the past have purchased it for the local police department at a cost of approximately $300,000 per machine, $200,000 for the machine plus about $100,000 for 5 years of service.
And the widespread use of that machine is hugely important to the success of the overall mission of identifying and correlating.
That's correct.
If you don't have the ability to input the information, then the system is less valuable.
That's correct. It's if I was to compare it to AFIS on the fingerprint side, the more fingerprints you have in the system, the more likely you will come back with a successful match.
Director Patel, let me ask you about what should I be worrying about? Kansas City is one of the host cities for the World Cup, a significant presence, and we've had, with your help, we've had a hearing in this subcommittee along with the Senator Britt's subcommittee on Homeland Security, looking at the security issues for places across the country associated with the World Cup. I wasn't able to ask you this question at the time, but just what are your worries and what should I be worrying about in trying to help Kansas City and other communities have the necessary safety and security for the people who attend?
For Kansas City, for any host cities, for any base camp cities, it's the same message. Our best partners are our state and local partners, and are providing the training that we do for our counter-UAS program to our host cities and our base camp cities is critical to that, but also deploying during the World Cup events to all the major cities across the country, including our SABTs, our bomb technicians, and our evidence response techs. We are prepared and already put out a program to surge to those cities ahead of time and during the World Cup staging events. We've also completed or will complete 300,000 background checks for individuals coming associated with the FIFA World Cup. So we run them against our background holdings along with the other federal law enforcement partners agencies, and then we push that back out to the field. But the best thing that the communities can do, because the communities are the best partners for the FBI, is the communities and the state and locals online can help us monitor, can help send tips to the FBI, can do it at NTOC, can do it at CJIS because of the AI capabilities that we've implemented there. And we're allowed to triage that data near live time and send it back to the community and the state and local and say, hey, this individual's a threat, or this individual's talking to someone that's a threat. It's the biggest ask I have of the United States during the World Cup or any major sporting event. We had the Olympics in Milan, we had two F1 races, the Super Bowl, and the Club World Cup last summer, and we had zero major security incidents. We've learned from each and every one of those with our international partners and our state and federal partners, and we're well prepared for the upcoming World Cup across America, which is going to have 3 million people come visit, both Canada and America and also Mexico. But the state and locals focusing on online threats for me and providing that information would be critical.
And that's a capability of sharing that information that they wouldn't have had in the absence of the attention that's being provided now due to the World Cup.
Absolutely. And also data on the sidelines, as I said earlier, might as well not be collected. So that's why we took the AI tools for the first time ever and applied them against triaging that data that comes in on the NTOC, our tip lines, and in our criminal justice information systems. We're able to go through all of that, including foreign language, and triage that, and foreign social media posts, and triage that. And we did so in North Carolina, just to give you one example, and prevented a school shooting. If we had just left it to human capital, we would have missed it.
Got it. Administrator Cole, I've had the opportunity to see DEA Air Wings, the aviation department, in a couple of locations across the country. I wanted to give you a moment to speak toward the current state of the DEA's aviation fleet, modernization or recapitalization needs the agency is facing. We've tried to pay some attention toward recapitalizing the DEA and other law enforcement agencies' air fleet, but I can't imagine that we're any place close to where it ought to be.
No, sir, we aren't, but thank you for your continued support of DEA Aviation. We recently sold one of our Challenger jets, and we're going to use those proceeds back to buy another King Air. The King Air is the workhorse of our agency, not only domestically but internationally. It's been our workhorse in Colombia and soon to be going back to Mexico. So it's much needed. We will continue to streamline our efforts, continue to enforce the importance of aviation, especially with surveillance. But it's a force protector for our men and women that are on the ground every single day as well. So thank you for your support.
And how does the budget request address that issue of recapitalization?
The budget address will help with the purchase of the new aircraft, but it'll also allow us to ensure that our aviation fleet is always modern, safe, and very efficient.
Let me turn again to you, though, Administrator Cole. Southwest Kansas sits in a major trafficking corridor, face, in my view, unique challenges tied to narcotics trafficking, specifically the movement of fentanyl and this is the second time I haven't been able to say words.
Methamphetamine.
Methamphetamines, thank
Yes,
you. Through rural communities that do not have the same local law enforcement resources as large cities do. The DEA has been willing to establish a position in Garden City, and I appreciate that. Would you speak to what additional steps the DEA is taking to incentivize agents to locate in a place like Garden City, which to me is a very fine place, but is rural, and it's considered a small town by many, but one of the largest that I represent. And tell me about what you need in regard to incentives for relocation or otherwise.
Well, thank you for that. And as a career special agent, my first assignment was McAlester, Oklahoma. 3 agents for 30 counties. So I know the importance of making sure that DEA is present in those rural counties. I'm committed to staffing the Garden City office. I'm going to personally pay attention to it. We're going to get you somebody there because it's the #1 priority, our connectivity to our state, local, and tribal partners to #1, address the fentanyl epidemic that's ravaging through our states, but also to increase the capacity when it comes to sharing intelligence that allows the state and locals to do their jobs.
Do you have incentive capability to incent someone to locate in a particular location, large or small?
Yes, sir, we do.
Director Patel, I want to ask you to speak about the current threat environment in regard to religious and specifically Jewish communities in the United States, the status of the October 7th task force, and what steps the FBI is taking to coordinate with local law enforcement in regard to religious institutions.
So we have focused heavily on those religious motivated acts of violence. And the October 7th task force, actually, I'm glad you bring it up, was the first model on the counterterrorism front that we utilized AI on our collection. And it gave us numerous leads, including the ability to stop and thwart attacks. We stopped 4 attacks during the holidays in just December alone. Unfortunately, the reality that the Jewish population faces is that 60% of the FBI's cases that are based in hatred or ideology are targeted against the Jewish community. And so what we're doing to countermand that front is a couple of things. One, get out as much information as we can to the American public to show that these investigations lead directly to ties based in ideology, in anti-Semitic values. And we're trying to educate the American public and the world that this is a very real threat here. Targeted behind the Jewish community are, of course, a good amount of Catholic and Christian hate-based ideology and crimes. And so what we've done across the enterprise is we've shifted the resources from DC, put them out into the field to specifically go out into the field and dismantle not just the networks on the ground, but also reverse engineer who these people know, who paid them, how they got there, where online they are communicating, because that's the biggest incubator for this hatred and ideology. And what we're trying to do with our SACs in the field is have engagements like we did with the synagogue in Michigan and elsewhere ahead of time and train the local communities based on the fact-based investigations we're conducting across the country so they can prevent, like they did in Michigan, a mass attack.
Senator Peters' question and your response in particular caught my attention, which suggested that there was knowledge and information in advance, and so there was capabilities of prevention or reduction in the outcome, the nature of the outcome. And is that unusual? Are you able to see? You able to see through your work that something is about to happen, as compared to respond to something that did happen?
That's correct, sir, and it's also just proactive. Because of the investigations we've undertaken in hate-based ideology, we're able to go out ahead of time to synagogues like in Michigan. So we didn't have a direct threat reporting related to that individual conducting that threat, but we knew other individuals and synagogues in the area would be targeted. So we went there and instructed them on how to secure the facility should they undergo an attack. And the individuals that worked there immediately called the FBI and they said, our training pursuant to you, the Bureau, led to us being able to save lives on that day. And we're doing that around the country.
It's a really rewarding circumstance. It was the FBI. It's pleasing to me. Director Seralto, U.S. Marshals have had success in regional fugitive task force models across the country. There's been conversations in the past about expanding or strengthening that regional task force capabilities in the Midwest part of the country. Is there a possibility of bringing an expanded regional fugitive task force presence to the Midwest? Is that still part of conversations at the U.S. Marshals Service?
Thank you for your question, Senator. So the President's budget request expands the regional fugitive task forces and the district task forces with operational administrative personnel dedicated to the fugitive apprehension missions. Also includes expansion of our tactical canine to provide each RFTF with a full-time canine support, extremely important. For that, we were provided with $43 million. However, the program increases is for 107 positions. Our goal is to cover the country from coast to coast with RFTFs. However, that does require permanent appropriated funding for that purpose. So, short answer is yes, sir.
There is thought. That was my second question. Do you have the resources to implement that thought? And your answer is not necessarily.
Not necessarily, sir.
Understand. Director Patel, I was an advocate of your idea a year ago of putting agents in the field, and we heard today a number of instances in which that's made a difference. And I assume that is a success and is the intention for the FBI to continue in that fashion.
Yes, sir. We're going to continue that way.
The hiring capabilities, do you all have positions that are empty, are vacant and need to be filled? Is that true across the board?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And the reason those positions are open is what? Is there a common denominator among the agencies? Someone could say what their problem is, and I'll see if everybody agrees.
I could speak for ATF. I think, sir, that for our purposes, we were under hiring freeze in 2025, so we weren't able to start up our hiring machine. We received authorization late in 25 to begin to backfill some of those vacancies. And in addition to that authorization, we've received significant support through some supplemental funding through the HSTF and OB3 to try to backfill agent positions. We are in that process right now, but as I stated, taking a machine from full stop and bringing it into operation takes some time. So we're in that stage right now where the machine is moving forward, and we anticipate being able to backfill those positions with the support that we've received.
Anybody need to add anything to Director Cicada's?
Senator, I'd like to add to that for the Marshal Service, our HR department actually has a very archaic software program for human resource management. So we're upgrading that system as we speak, thanks to the help from DOJ and OMB. And I believe we're going to be able to get over that hurdle.
Okay. And Director Patel talked about the training of local law enforcement, the FBI Academy, and its value and the demand for those services. I know the FBI has their own training facility. We ought to figure out how we can train more local law enforcement officials. I've seen and had conversations with local law enforcement officers as well as their superiors who are so pleased by the training they've received, and it's a professional change in their lives, having had that experience. Is once you find someone to fill a position, is training an issue to get them on board and at work?
I think there's two pieces to that. The National Academy to train our state and locals, for whatever reason, they had capped it before I got there, and everybody across the country wanted more slots. So I'm putting 200 more police officers through our National Academy here, 50 more per class.
That problem you're apparently solving, right?
Yeah, that one we've solved. On the BFTC side of the house for the special agents, what our lag was there was essentially 100 days from once you submit a piece of paper, your application, to say, I would like to come do this, and for them to just receive an interview. So we eliminated the lag time. So we took off almost 4 months of lag time. And because of that, our BFT classes have started going up. And so our recruiting is also been heavily invested in to recruit around the country. And so we're filling the billets, and as soon as you graduate BFTC, you go immediately to your field office assignment. There's no, literally the day after graduation, you report for duty.
Let me ask the other agencies, if you're successful in recruiting, do you have the capacity then to train and put that new agent in the field at work?
Senator, from DEA perspective, since we're back to global enforcement, we have no shortage of applicants, and we have space. We have our own academy next to the FBI Academy at Quantico. So we've been running significant classes through the academy.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
U.S. Marshals and ATF?
From the Marshal Service perspective, we use FLETC. They have accommodated an increase in classes to date, and we have a great working relationship, but would explore other methods if they're available.
Okay.
And the same for us, sir. We also have our agents go through FLETC, and FLETC has accommodated us by providing double the number of classes that we are normally slated for 27.
Thank you. Only other comment I'd make, and then we'll close the hearing, is the Homeland Security task forces that we were accustomed to OCDEF prior to that. Now we have HSTFs. We're working, and if there's ways that we can be of help, maybe that's the way for me to say it. Homeland Security needs to make reimbursements to the various agencies, and so we're working to make sure that that happens in a timely fashion. I would guess DHS, because of a number of reasons, is administrative challenges in the last few months, maybe is slow in accomplishing that, but we recognize the money that needs to be transferred to get to the agencies to participate in the joint efforts. That makes sense. Am I missing something? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to ask that question this time. If there's no further questions, senators may submit additional records for the subcommittee's official hearing record. We request the director and administrator's response within 30 days. Subcommittee stands in recess, subject to call of the chair.